There's a lot of talk online about how it's so much easier to buy your first home now compared to in the past. But is it? Let's have a look at some data. Back in the 1980s, around 33% of first home buyers were out there in the marketplace buying up property. Jump to 2025 and that percentage is 13% less. So now you're looking at about 20% of the market being first home buyers. Now, something that I am aware of is that a lot of first home buyers right now are going down the rent vesting route. So rather than buying that property for them to live in as their first home, they're buying it as an investment property. But why are there so much less first home buyers now compared to the 1980s? Here's a few reasons why. So in the 80s, median house prices compared to your income was about 3 to 4 times. In today's numbers, we're looking at about 9 to 12 times your income. Deposits also required these days are looking at about $150,000 to $250,000 for the average property. Interest rates back then were a lot higher, anywhere between 10 to 17%, but because the house prices were a lot lower and plus your deposit was lower as well, it didn't have that much impact. Where today you're looking at anything from about 5.5% to 7%, house prices are much higher, so you are paying more in interest. Wage growth is another point which is super important, which we just spoke about. Demographic, social shifts. So most people in the 80s married a lot younger and they also bought their property a lot younger. The average purchase price for a first home these days around that 36 to 38 mark. Another reason why the percentage was a lot higher back then is because investors were actually a very small percentage of the marketplace in the 80s, where it's a lot more popular now. So to summarize, price to income back then was 3 to 4 times your income. Now it's 9 to 12 times your income. Your median age back then was about 27 to 28. Now it's about 10 years post that. Deposit size were around that 20 to 30 grand back then. Now you're looking at on average 150 to 250. First home buyer share was back then 30 to 35%. Now it's around 20%. Now, back then, obviously, 20 to 30 grand was the average deposit in the 80s. And obviously, with inflation, that works out to be about 65 to around 98,000 in today's dollars. Now, I hope you've watched the whole video. This video here is really just to highlight that it isn't a lot easier now than what it was in the 80s. It actually was easier in the 80s because of those factors. Now, that does not mean that it's all doom and gloom and it's absolutely hard right now. It's still very possible for a lot of people, and I speak to people every single day that are buying their first home. It's still super possible, but it was easier